Whether you want more innovation more easily, you're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something just isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead with resilience, adaptability, and ease. Joining me today is Viveka von Rosen. Viveka is a celebrated LinkedIn expert, a best selling author, a transformational speaker, and she is dedicated to empowering successful executives and entrepreneurs with their brand and business pivots. With over 19 years of experience in LinkedIn marketing and sales, and having guested on over 300 podcasts, she is a recognized authority in the business world. As an accomplished author and international speaker, Viveka captivates audiences with her keynote addresses on transition and transformation, catalyzing people to find their voices and create their own transformational ventures. Viveka's core message is women's words will change the world, and her mission is to empower her clients to bring their legacy dreams to life. And somehow, she also has time to love hang gliding, scuba diving, hiking, and will soon be buying a powered paraglider.
Yeah.
Welcome, Viveka.
Thank you. You always want to put the personal stuff at the end there.
For some reason, I had in my head when I was transferring your bio that you sent to me into my notes that it was a solar powered paraglider. And then I was reading
Ooh.
before the show and I saw it was just a powered paraglider. And I have no idea where that solar part came from.
What a cool idea. No, not solar powered, but that would be cool too. Very, very Mad Max, post-apocalyptic.
Where you are up in the mountains of Colorado, it might be helpful.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Yeah, it's funny. We don't see many regular paragliders flying around because we're actually in the foothills. But I've started in the summer evenings seeing a couple powered paragliders, and I'm like, oh, I have to do that because once you get up, you can turn the power off, and then you can just fly, and it's
Ah,
just easier than hang gliding.
you can go from your driveway instead of needing a drop off.
Exactly.
That's great. When, Viveka, did you first recognize that integrating your whole self, bringing that into everything that you do, might be a valuable approach?
You know, many times, but most recently, it was, kind of mid-2023. I was in my previous company that we had built, and I realized I had left a lot of myself behind, just slowly, kind of without even realizing it. I had started my LinkedIn journey back in 2004, and I had slowly become more focused in on the marketing and sales industries and then on the B2B industry. And then, speaking, going from a more entrepreneurial audience to a more techie type audience. And certainly by the time we started Vangresso, which was a digital sales transformation company, changed PLG software company, um, a lot. I just left so much of myself behind. I left my sense of balance and integration. Like there was no balance or integration. It was work, work, work. And I really left my intuition behind. And I realized I just did not enjoy life anymore. I mean, you'd go on vacation and that was nice. You'd go hang gliding or scuba diving and that was nice, but the daily was feeling really disconnected. And so, yeah, when I was literally in my hospital bed, um, from a bad surgery and working on grants for my last company, which I'm not a grant writer and this is not my area of expertise by a long shot. And I was just kind of going, what the heck am I doing? And that's when I realized I needed to change my life, A, but also I needed to pick up those practices that allowed me to feel more integrated.
What was it that let you recognize at that point that you had become so disintegrated?
Yeah, I think just, like, literally being being in a hospital bed working on grants, it was like, "What are you doing?" Like, here you are not living life, putting your life at risk, in fact, and not enjoying life, and I I had such a strong sense of, purpose when I was younger, and I thought I had achieved kind of what I was put on this earth to do, but I realized that the product I had created, the speaking, the books, were not in alignment with what I felt my impact could be. And so that discontinuity really affected, well, it affected my health. It affected everything. Of course, it affects us on a mental and an emotional level. And then when we ignore it, it moves right on into our bodies until we can't ignore it anymore. So, yeah. Don't wait that long, people. Do not wait that long.
So let me say this back and check if I have this right. So
Yeah.
you, as you were there in the hospital bed working on grants,
Yeah.
as lots of leaders would be doing,
Yeah.
you realized you had this string of increasingly severe incidents, I'll say,
Yeah.
leading up to that, that had been tapping at your door saying, something may
Yeah.
not quite be right here. And finally, that
Hello.
tapping got loud enough that you could hear it. Is that a good summary?
Oh, I think it was pretty loud, I just wasn't listening. I was like, "La, la, 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 la." So, I mean, the universe, God, whatever, the higher being, your higher intuition, whatever you wanna call it, um, speaks to you constantly, right? You are constantly getting messages all day long, but if you're not listening for them, if you're not looking for them, um, you don't see them, but even then, it's kind of like the parable of the guy, the guy who the river's coming up and God sends him a a canoe and a helicopter. And, no, I'm waiting for God. And so I probably had a lot I know I had a lot of indicators that it was time for me to make a shift. And I was just kind of going la 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 and not paying attention to them. So my listening was turned off, even though the messages were definitely there. I think, and again, don't wait this long. I literally got to a point where I couldn't do another day. I just couldn't do another day. I had hit the wall. I called my business heart partner and said, I can't do this anymore. And I won't get into that story, but it did take me another 6 months to extricate myself. But it was just, I literally couldn't do it anymore. And from that point on, at least knowing that this was not going to be my future, I didn't put my whole self into it like I had been, and I started allowing for the space of possibility. I started journaling, I started meditating. I'd love to say started doing yoga, but that would be a lie. But I did start allowing for some space to see what might be next and what was in more alignment with what I felt might be my purpose and my calling.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The reason I'm drilling on this a little bit, trying to get into the
Yeah.
specifics, is so many of the leaders I talk with
Yeah.
come to me knowing that something isn't right,
Mhm.
not knowing how to identify what it is, let alone
Yep.
how to change it. And oftentimes, as we get into it, we discover that they had had signals, as you had,
Yeah.
that they hadn't recognized, that they had
Mhm.
ignored, that they hadn't realized were
Yep.
actually signals.
Yep.
And so when I find people like you who recognize the signals, I want to understand what helped you recognize it so I can help
Yeah.
all these other people I work with recognize it too.
I love that. Yeah, for me, it was just, I think the biggest thing for me was I started doing my journaling practice again, which I had just dropped. I'd pick up my journal like once a month and write a couple pages, maybe if I had listened to a podcast that talked about it or something like that. But I had definitely gotten out of my morning practice of writing 2 to 3 pages of just stream of consciousness. And then meditating. I had definitely gotten out of that practice as well. So just adding those 2 practices back in, um, not only did messages come through, like my book ideas, like everything, basically my entire business as it is now came through that. But also what I realized is, for the rest of the day, I would be more aware of what was going on. And one of the things I think it was Gabby Bernstein talked about was something called driftwood, which is oftentimes when people are doing what we want to be doing ourselves, we see them doing it, we feel envy, or jealousy, or why can't it be me? But she said, you should reframe that. That's just a signal from the universe saying, hey, girl, hey, dude, they're doing it, you can too. Like, this is just a signal that this is possible and you should be doing it. And so I started noticing that driftwood a lot more. And then when I did see something like, why does she have a new book? Why was she able? I I would just go, oh wait, no, that's just an indication that my new book's on the way, and that kind of thing. The other thing is I asked for, and again, I think this was a Gabby Bernstein thing, but I just asked for a signal. Like, and for me, I love numbers, not in a mathematical way at all, but I just, for whatever reason, like magical numbers, like 1111, 444, things like that, 333. And so I said, let me know I'm on the right path by throwing those numbers at me. And it's nuts. Like, I'll look up and it'll be 1111, it'll be 1212, it'll be 333. I remember driving to a retreat and it was 1111. I had I was on mile like 77,777 on driving, like, and it was 12, and it was there was something else. It was like 33 degrees. I don't know. I'm making this up, but it was like all of these numbers just went into alignment. And it was actually, I went to a retreat. The retreat massively shifted energy for me. And so that was just like, okay, cool. So ask for that. Like, whatever you want your symbol to be. Maybe it's butterflies, or seeing a cardinal, or whatever. Just ask for those little indicators that you're on the right path.
One thing I'm hearing a lot of from you is that you bring a really playful approach to all of this. And in my experience, the more we can show up and play, first off, the more fun we're going to have.
Yeah,
But then also,
that's true.
the easier it is to understand, to hear the signals,
Yeah.
to receive the guidance, and to experiment in a ways that are safe rather than making them do or die type situations.
Oh, yeah. I thank you for saying that. A lot of people feel like these big pivots or evolvements, I like that word better now, that we do, have to be painful. And up until that point, well, and including that point, because no one enjoys time in the hospital, at least I don't think so. Um, up until that point, like, most of the major shifts in my life came with really hard freaking lessons, and so I love what you just said because I am all about it being fun. It might not be easy, but let's make it as fun and joyful as possible.
All the times I've been most successful, received the most accolades, rewards, promotions, all the things that people always want from work have been
Right.
times I said, when people asked me what I did, I would say, I play all day.
I love it. I love that. I'm not quite there yet because I still have to edit blogs and such, but but no, I think and if you go into your day with that mindset of play and joy and creativity and creation, um, I mean, first of all, you'll just be so much more productive than going into the day of like, "Oh, I gotta do this," because you procrastinate less because it's fun. So you're a lot more productive and effective, I think. And yeah, it's what life is meant to be, not this crush it, panicked, cortisone rich, cortisol rich rather, drive that seems to be what everybody thinks success is.
Yes. And play doesn't necessarily mean easy.
No.
Play can be really challenging
Yeah.
task.
Like learning how to hang glide or scuba dive. I mean,
Those are great
yeah.
examples. The more we're in that sense of play, the more easeful it's likely to
Yeah.
be.
That's a great way of putting it.
As you've been through all these evolutions, and especially as you're entering into and inhabiting your current evolution, how do you build cultures where you and the people on your team and the people at the companies that you're working with, your clients, feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that you do and they do?
Sometimes you have to start with the baby steps. I'm just thinking of a couple. I'm thinking of a couple of my clients who were not ready to make the transition out of a friend of mine said muggle jobs the other day. I loved that. They're not really quite ready to make the transition out of their muggle jobs. So no worries. You can always explore what's possible after hours, or in the morning. Although one of my clients, she just cracked me up. She's like, because she used to get up at 6 a.m. because she had an East Coast company. Um, and she's like, well, I guess I'll just get up at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, oh my God, you are not getting the point here. And it's not about getting up earlier. It's about finding time in your natural day to make space for this creativity. But yeah, you can step into the energy um, a little bit at a time until you're ready to make the full leap. But what I will say is don't play it safe for too long either, because this same client, her company ended up going bankrupt, and she had set a by when date, but the company went bankrupt by before then, before she was able to leave. So she was kind of forced into the deep end really quickly. So make space for the creativity, make space for the fun, make space for the play, make space for what's possible in bite-sized pieces, but start adding to that meal, and to the point where your dream we'll just call it your dream job, where that dream career, where that dream focus is now actually more important and stronger and takes more time than the maybe the muggle job does. And that's when you'll realize, okay, it's time to just leave.
So if we're not going to get up earlier or stay up later, and I don't know that anyone can clone ourselves yet, how do you we can delegate,
We can
or maybe
delegate.
that's
Yeah.
one answer is
Yep.
how do we find time for moving all the things that we do
Yep.
now aside to start doing things that we might want to do?
Well, what I'm going
Delegation
to
is
tell
one.
you and tell the audience is you have the time. We're not making the most use of our time. So, one of the things that I recommend people do is like literally everything you do from the moment you wake up in the morning and for a week, open up your notes or whatever and make a note of what you're doing and how long it takes and be honest with yourself because if you're not honest with yourself, I mean no one is going to see this except for you, but literally do an audit of your time. And what you will find are pockets in there where you are just wasting time. And unfortunately, it's usually pockets of time where you are your most creative. So for me, I'm definitely more creative in the morning. What I found was in the mornings, I was just kind of lollygagging, la la la, brush my teeth, la la la, scroll through the news, la la la, make my breakfast, la la la. And what I realized if I could be more intentional about getting up, brushing my teeth, putting the coffee on while I was washing my face, and if I could get more proficient with those activities, I suddenly had an extra 15 to 20 minutes in the morning. So you will find time, or you can actually create time in your day. And then never mind all the Netflix, just sitting around listening to the news, the time we waste. The other thing is, I still love listening to fiction books, but when I go on walks now, I listen to inspirational books or business books or, something that is more feeds my soul a little bit more than just, listening to a fiction novel. So same amount of time walking the dog, but now I'm feeding myself rather than just wasting time. And the other thing is, and to please stay safe, but if you find yourself driving or on a commute and you have an idea, you could, think about those ideas and then you can like hands free, of course, speak them into your phone so that you're capturing those ideas or just put the recorder on or whatever so that you can capture those times in those in between moments. But you will find if you do an audit of your day, you will find pockets of time that you just weren't even aware that you were wasting, and you can utilize those and use those in a more creative way.
And
Also, you
it's
can
not that.
delegate and make your husband cook more.
Let the dog do the dishes.
Let the Oh, no, but seriously, my dog does clean my dishes, and then I put them in the dishwasher.
That's exactly where I was heading. Yes.
But I saved 10 minutes not having to rinse and scrub,
Exactly. Don't need to
and Cal is
pre-rinse when
so
you have a
happy.
dog. And it's
SPC
not like
Someone's
we
gonna
need to
call
find
us into the SPCA.
know what foods are safe for dogs and don't let them have it when it's not.
Exactly.
And it's not like we need to find, especially starting out, hours or even an hour. 5 minutes a day
Yeah.
is more than enough time to get started. And
Yeah,
especially early on
absolutely.
can be way more productive than longer blocks of time because 5 minutes is
Absolutely.
enough to set an intention, set a
Yeah.
question, and then let the universe, unconscious, all the places that your guidance comes from,
Yeah.
go do some searches and come back with the
Yes.
answers.
I love that. Set an intention at night and see what comes up at first thing in the morning, right? Set an intention or ask a question at night and see if you get the solution by the morning time. That stuff's cool. I love that.
As we're learning how to build these cultures for ourselves,
Yeah.
and how can we take this into doing this with our teams so that we help our people show up in their whole self and bring all of that genius to bear on all the gnarly problems we have.
Yeah. It's really about value. We say we value our teams, but generally we value the skill sets they have that we need for our businesses. We don't value the whole person. So it's a really good idea to get to know your team members better, because you might find out they work better in the morning than at night. And so maybe, have them do the activities that you need earlier and leave the evenings, or whatever it is. One of my team members, while she does a lot of things for me, she loves doing video editing, and so and the creativity of that piece. And so I try and create more opportunity for her to do that. And maybe, it ends up being that I use her to do video editing, not only for myself, but for my clients. And I find somebody else to do the work that she doesn't love doing. And maybe a different team member just loves the strategy of it all. Great. Like, find out really what your team thrives at and give them the space. And I'm all about a flex schedule. I know there's controversy. I know some people love it, some people hate it, but there's nothing that has to be done tomorrow. And if there is, I'll do it. But I love allowing my team to work in the time that serves them best. And I find it gets better results. And then also let your team grow. Um, there's a scarcity mindset about, if my team member grows out of their position, like, that's going to cost me money. But there's just so much abundance, and there's just so many opportunities, and there's just so much great talent out there, that let your team members grow. Help them to grow they can help you grow your own business if you allow them to grow. You can find somebody else to replace the old job position that doesn't serve them and doesn't serve, them in your business anymore. So it's really a matter of allowing your team to grow, period.
There's always anything that you don't want to do. If there's more than, there's almost certainly someone on your team who would love to do that for you.
Yes. Yeah.
And even if there are rules from someone that says this is who has to do what, they aren't on your team. They're probably
Yeah.
not, I really hope, spying on you, tracking every movement. So, how the team works internally can be
Yeah.
completely different from how the team seems to be working from externally.
Yeah.
Maybe manager has to be the one that sends the status report that people want.
Yeah.
Manager doesn't have to write it. They just have to send. Anyone on that team or a bunch of people on the team could write that status report and then send it to the manager, who will then send it
That's
on
right.
to whoever.
And you have to, this just seems so obvious, but it's also not very practiced. You have to create a safe environment for people to tell you what they like to do and what they don't like to do. And it's not that, sure, you're only going to do what you love. Like, don't get me wrong, there are tasks I still do that I don't love, uh, but definitely allow an environment where people can communicate honestly about what's serving them and what's not serving them. Because quite frankly, if it's not serving them, they're not going to stick. They're just not going to stick. So find out sooner rather than later and see if you can grow them within the company. And if you can't, then it's a good time to cut bait, well, but before either one of you gets hurt anymore. But that open communication and that honest communication. The other thing, and I'm kind of guilt. I don't do this myself, so this is definitely a do as you say and not as you do. But my team now is not big enough. My team before was, but things like, human design, ENFP, like personality tests, Myers-Briggs, whatever tool you want to use, those really can help you decipher who on your team is best to do what, and then you can play to their strengths rather than their weaknesses.
I really love all the personality assessments,
Yeah.
not necessarily as a this is who you are,
Right.
but much more as a this is a way to start a conversation. So
Yeah.
this particular slice through someone's understanding of how people work suggests that you're going to work in this way. How does that
Yeah.
resonate for you? It's spot on. Great. Let's talk more about that. This part of it doesn't make sense. Great.
Let's
How
talk more
does
about
that part
that.
work for you? It's not about the this test says this is who I am and so that's who I am. It's that this test gives me some places to start and then we can have a conversation about how do you work best.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I was at a retreat this summer, and, one of the things that we had to do before we attended the retreat was we had to go through that the can't remember if I think it was Myers-Briggs. I don't even remember what kind it was. I was a 7, so whatever. Enneagram. We had to do the Enneagram, that was it, and I think I was a 7. I might be making that up too. Anyway, the point being, it was a launch for conversation, but because the people who held the retreat knew the Enneagram numbers of all of the attendees and what that actually meant, they could design a day that or a whole retreat actually, that served all of our different personality types. And so there were breakouts that would serve that community, but we did different things because of how we learned and how we processed. So I thought that is a very powerful way of using these personality tests. But of course, you would definitely want to do that with people coming into your company so you can just see, am I hiring the right person, and are they going to be a good fit, and are they going to play well with others? This would give you some good indication. And then when things get sticky, there's the opportunity to have a conversation around that.
And it can even work in really much more basic or simple situations. Like
Mm.
you said earlier, how some people don't want flex time. Well, flex
Right, right.
time doesn't
They don't love
mean
it.
you get to work. Flex time means you work whenever you want. It doesn't have to mean you can't work in structure. Flex
Right.
time really means people who want to be totally spontaneous can work that way. People who want
Yeah.
to work by a very rigid and controlled schedule, they get to do that too. And everyone
Yeah.
else between gets to do what's right for them.
Yeah. Just, set up expectations. It's like if it's easier with the rigid schedule, like I'm going to be working 9 to 5 and I'm going to have off noon to 1. Okay, cool. I'll know not to, expect something to be done between noon and 1. And then for my folks who are two of my employees are in the Philippines, um, they will work US hours, but I'm like, there's really no need for you to. I don't, anything that needs to be done can be done within 24 hours. It doesn't have to be done within 2 hours. Like, please stop staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning thinking that you have to like be awake while I am working. You do not need to do that. So it took for a while for them to believe me, but eventually they did.
I'm glad.
We have one
It's
meeting a week where we're in a US time zone, but which is actually super early for me, but that's it's fine.
and that's pretty much always the case on
Yeah.
just about everything that we run into that there will be some cases where we might need to flex outside of our preferences a little bit.
Yeah.
Much fewer cases where we need to flex way out of our
Yeah.
preferences.
Yeah.
And simply knowing what our preferences are, let us prepare and then recoup after from those times where we're really extremely flexing out.
Yes. Absolutely.
I know if I'm going to any sort of event with more than 3 people, I am going to take days to myself beforehand and afterwards. And the more
Same.
people are going to be there, the longer, the more those days before and after are going to be.
No, no one believes me that I'm an introvert, but I do. I feel by myself. And so and I set expectations like it is so great to see you all and I would love to go out with you tonight after spending what feels like 48 hours with you in today. But I really I just I need some time to myself and most people will understand that. But if you don't tell them that, then they're like, "Well, she's a snooty person," you know?
And if you don't tell them that and go along, then th-
Or
you
yeah, or
aren't
go
having
along and the
fun.
next you're like yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no one's having as much fun then.
No. Although I will say
This
sometimes I have to
is
force myself to do things, and when I do like the other day, there was a networking event, and I had agreed to go, and so I was really not wanting to, but I made myself go, and I really enjoyed it, and I met some really cool people, and I was really glad I went, but it was was hard. I don't like walking into a room where I don't know anyone. One person I know makes all the difference in the world. Nobody, and I'm just like, "Oh."
and we all have cases like that.
Yeah,
That's a great
for sure.
example of how understanding where our preferences are lets us choose to flex out of them in
Yes.
hopes of or knowing that we will gain something from that.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely.
The more we understand about who we are and how we work, the more intentional we can be about living our life.
For
And the
sure.
more fun we're going to have.
Exactly.
Fun intentionality for us is great. What's and it may help me work with my coworkers,
Yeah.
have more fun with them. That's great. What's
Yeah.
the business value of doing all this work, creating these cultures?
Yeah, productivity. I mean, it seems counterintuitive, but I feel like companies that play together, that speak together, that are in an honest conversation with each other are just more functional. Um, I can I think we can all, I don't even have to share an example. I think we can all think of a time, a place, a company that was very striated, that was very pyramidical, for want of a better word, that was very isolated, siloed, that was very, you know, function and productivity based, but without allowing for true growth and creativity. And, I'm sure some of those companies are still in business, but a lot of them are not. And a lot, it takes a leader who can trust their, not blindly, but can trust their team, that will allow their team to function, to sometimes make mistakes, to grow from those mistakes. What I see too often is leadership that is micromanaging, which doesn't work for many reasons. But one of them is maybe that leader's way isn't the best way. And if you're micromanaging your entire company to do what you do, or to think like you think, or to function like you function, you may be severely limiting the possibilities. I know I can't think of everything, be everything, do everything. One of the reasons I started my last company was because I was moving into it with 6 other leaders, and I admired them and I wanted to learn and grow from them, and so, if you come into leadership with with a big, as they say, a beginner mind, with, a mind that continuously wants to be educated and to learn and to grow, it's going to make your company, I think, more functional in the long run. It might be a little uncomfortable and a little dysfunctional at first, but once you get things rolling along, you can see great gains.
How do you help your clients take those first steps to being more open to maybe I don't have to be fully in charge, know all the
Yeah.
answers? And
Yeah.
how do you help them help their
Yeah.
teams understand that they're making this shift?
It's audits, 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 and I don't mean like financial audits, although that's good to know. Kind of know where you're at and where you've got some leeway and some openings. But do audits on your own strengths and do research on what else is out there and do those personality tests for your customers and for your clients too, for that matter. Um, and be in that space of learning so that it's always exploration. It's always discovery. Um, what's possible. And what's interesting, so I usually work with the leaders, not with the whole company. So when I work with the leadership, I mean, it's easy for me to see where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are. So a lot of times I will ask them questions that will showcase where they are strong and where they are weak. And then we will talk about delegation and who can take over that. I had a call the other day. It was with a client, and she just didn't have any time and had all these things she needed to do. And her husband's retired. And I'm like, okay, so can he do this? Can he do that? Can he do this other thing? Like, why do you have to do all of the things in your business and in the house? And, it didn't even occur to her to ask him, and he probably would love to do it. And so, we're so blinded by our own expectations that we sometimes need somebody else to reflect back to us who we are, what we do, what we need, what we want, how we can function best.
This is another reason I love the personality assessments because it
Yeah.
gives us a external view on what people might enjoy doing and what maybe they don't so
Yeah.
much enjoy doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It it can trigger thoughts that we never would have had otherwise.
Right. Yeah. And not that I'm never going to give all my power away to an outside authority anymore. But having an outside authority to reflect back to us who we are and where our strengths are, that can be very, very powerful. And then you make your own decision as to if it's true or not.
Absolutely. If I know Viveka is an, if I believe Viveka is an extrovert, and then we do this Myers Briggs or one of the other assessments that uses that spectrum, and I found out, oh,
Yep.
actually, she's kind of like more on the introvert side, then that could totally change my whole perspective of
Yeah.
how you show up. And it lets me bring that into conversations. And so
Yes.
maybe I start asking if you'd like to come to the after dinner and the
Yes.
after work functions instead of just assuming that, of course, you're going to come because you love being around people.
Right, right. Yeah, no, and it's assumptions. We assume things day in, day out about ourselves and about other people. And yes, if we can clarify some of those assumptions, then maybe we can have more effective relationships. Like, I assume my husband should just read my mind about everything. Like, maybe, maybe I should actually ask him if he's willing to make dinner. And I did. I did. I just assumed that he would see me working all of these hours and know that I would be exhausted and realize I would there he is realize I wouldn't be into cooking dinner after working all day when he wasn't working as hard maybe. But that was an assumption, and I would get mad because I would work all day, be exhausted, go upstairs and have to make dinner too. Like, I'd be so mad. And then finally I'm like, okay, take yourself as a client. Yeah. Hey, honey, would you be willing to, make some of these green chef dinners 3 nights a week? Sure, I'd be happy to. Oh, oh,
I
oops.
love this. This is such a great example of how simple things can get super complex in our head. How conversations we worry will be really hard may actually be super simple.
Oh,
And
yeah.
simply asking a question can completely change the dynamics of a situation.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know. It's never as hard as you think it's going to be. It is never as hard as you think it's gonna be. I think to every conversation I've put off, I haven't wanted to do, from breaking up with my fiancés in the past to, you know, leaving my last job to, well, okay, that was kind of hard conversation, to, to asking my husband to make dinner. Like, it's never as hard as you think it's gonna be, so just do it.
Which is a great segue into my next question. How do you help yourself and your people, all the people that you're working with,
Yeah.
find their way through all the change, uncertainty, and overwhelm? This seems to be what life is these days.
And I have to constantly remind myself that my inner voice, my inner knowing is knows everything, and I just, or any it knows everything that's important, that's really important. And so it's a constant practice to go back and trust our inner voices and our inner knowing. And you can't do it from scratch. I mean, you can't just go, okay, I'm going to start trusting my inner knowing, when I haven't gone inside, whatever that looks like. I mean, for me, as I said, it's journaling. For other people, it's playing music. For other people, it's painting. For other people, it's meditation. For other people, it's yoga. For other people, it's hiking. For other people, it's rock climbing. For other people, it's hang gliding, right? Which is very hard to do every day. But whatever that going within is, that puts you into that meditative open space where you stop thinking and start absorbing. You have to make that a daily practice. But once you've done that and once you're kind of tapped in, then it becomes much easier to go back to that inner knowing and that inner voice. And then, oh, yeah, by the way, you have to trust it, because I will tell you, every time my inner voice says to do this and I do this instead, I always freaking regret it. And here is the other thing, it's like there's no degrees when it comes to intuition. Like, not, if I got an intuition not to drive to the store and I drive anyway and I get into a massive accident and, my car gets crushed and I lose my leg, like that intuition feels the same as, don't walk on the ice and I slip and I sprain my ankle. Like, it just, there's, the intuitive voice is the same. It's not like big intuition or small intuition. Maybe this is just me. So I just never know. So I'm just going to trust it. Like, if I get an intuitive hit to do something or not to do it, I'm just going to trust it, because if I don't, it could be a massive car crash or it could be a sprained ankle. But since I don't know what it's going to be, I'm going to trust the intuition. And that's a learning in and of itself, too, because I think for all of you out there who are listening, if you've had an intuition and you've gone against it, sometimes the consequences are minor and it's like whatever, and sometimes they're massive. So, just trust it. Just trust it.
And for listeners who may be wondering how to start playing with this in a
Yeah.
less potentially traumatic way, ask your intuition on to make decisions that don't matter. If you're going
Yeah.
for a walk, At an intersection, which way should you go?
Oh my gosh, I love that.
When you're getting dressed in the morning, which outfit should I wear?
What
Or
should I wear?
even just which pair of socks or underwear, which no one probably is going to see, and so it doesn't matter.
Oh my god, I love that. Yes, yes. Yes, absolutely. Which way drive to work a different way. I can only drive to work by going up and down my stairs, so but there are other ways to get to my office. So actually, I love that. Like what yeah, yeah. When it comes to a decision and we make thousands of them every day, like, okay, what should I have for dinner? Yeah. I love that. I love that.
For everyone who is enjoying our conversation and would like to get in touch with you to learn more about how you work, all the joy that you bring, the work you do, and the people you help, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, probably the website beyondthedreamboard.com. I've got a connect page there or LinkedIn, although my name is much harder to spell. It used to be easy. I used to be like Google LinkedIn expert. You'll find me. But now it's Viveka von Rosen, so that's harder. But I am the only one out there, I think, right now. So just Google me, find me on LinkedIn, go to my website, Beyond the Dream Board. Yeah, but definitely reach out, say you listen to this podcast, and yeah, let's have a conversation.
And I'll have all these links on the show notes, as well as to the 35 strategies you have up for us.
Oh, the 35 strategic. Yeah, yeah. So that yes, I have. I forgot about that. Thank you for the reminder. I do. If you are wondering, is it time to make a pivot or, what can I do to be or evolvement? What could I do to do that in a more thoughtful way? Yeah, I do a free 35-minute session. And it's not a sales pitch. It's just like let's it's a discovery. Let's see what's possible for you. And I'm more than, yeah, we got the link in the show notes, and I'm more than happy to jump on a call with you.
Sounds great. What would you like to leave our audience with today, Viveka?
I think going back to what we have been talking about, really from the beginning is just trust yourself. And it might take practice to where you can trust yourself, but, learn how to tap into that deeper knowing. I love what Michael just said about, practice it with inconsequential decisions every day because it will help you become more aligned with your deeper knowing, and that will make all the difference.
Thank you, Viveka, for a fabulous conversation today.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
This has been great. And thank you, audience, for joining us today on this ride. Viveka and I would love to know, where do you 100% trust yourself today? Where are you learning to trust? Please let us know, and let us know if we can help. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thanks.